Welcome to the Jose Aliaga Show. And today I have a special guest, a friend of mine, but someone who have a lot of wealth of knowledge. My friend Troy Coffin. How you doing, Troy?
Hey Jose, doing well. Thanks so much for having me as always.
It's always a pleasure, my friend. Always nice to see my friend Troy Coffin. Troy, we have a lot of topics to talk about, things that happening. But today, when I talked to this morning, you told me, Jose, I want to talk about a topic that everybody's talking right now, and I think you have a lot of knowledge, and you're gonna give me a good display about this. Troy, I want to ask you, and really, probably, let's talk about this topic. Troy, so what do you think about today matchup between Ohio State, the Buckeyes, and the Indiana Hoosiers? I mean, one is the number one, and the other one is the number two team in the country, and they're facing off in Indianapolis today. So what do you think about that?
Well, it would be cool to see Indiana Hoosiers win this game, not gonna lie. I'll be totally honest with you. It'd be awesome to see Indiana take down Ohio State in this matchup. And specifically because I don't think it's going to happen, though. I will say that it's incredible to see the current state of the Indiana Hoosiers football program compared to where they have been in the past. For many years, they've been at the bottom of the Big Ten, bottom of the country, arguably. They've been one of the worst teams in the country in just about every statistical category, including the most important one, which is the win category. But, I tip my hat to Curt Cignetti and where he's brought this college football program, because he's taken them on a magical run, and it's been amazing to watch.
I see. And who do you think the rosters compared to, and which team do you feel has the best to win tonight? Out of those teams, who do you think is? Take a guess. Who do you think is gonna win? Because I know you know more than me about this.
Okay, so on paper, the Buckeyes are by far the most talented team in the country. In fact, I think they're even better than their scores reflect because of Ryan Day's conservative play calling, for one. He likes to keep everyone on a tight snap count, avoid injuries. He doesn't care much for style points. That's just kind of his style but he likes to just keep everything. I don't think he likes. I think part of it is he doesn't want to put their play on video, because the more videos out there, the more people can plan against it. So I think that's a big part of it. Is Ryan Day plays like a psychological game against his opponent, or against his opponents by keeping his cards close to his chest most of the season, which is pretty understandable because they don't really, especially this year, they played a fairly easy schedule, so they didn't have to do a whole lot to beat a lot of the inferior opponents. But Curt Cignetti for Indiana, he likes to run up scores, and so comparing the margin of victory between the games that Ohio State's played and Indiana's played, some might think of Indiana as being the front runner in this game. And it's understandable. Personally, if I was either team tonight, though, I would treat this like a regular season game, because conference titles have sort of lost their value, lost their meaning in the current football landscape. If you look at last year's playoff run, the two teams that made the national championship game were the same teams that did not play for the conference title games, and they beat the other teams that did. So, in that being, Notre Dame and Ohio State, neither one played in the conference title games last year. And now I do feel that last year was sort of like, it was almost like, I'd hate to be superstitious here, but it's almost like it was a thing of destiny last year, because back in there's Notre Dame has a 30-year tradition where every Notre Dame head coach is dating back to 1943. Wow, 1943. Didn't realize how long ago that was. But yeah, all past and presently head coaches at Notre Dame all either won the national championship or made the national title game in their third year as head coach. And so last year was Marcus Freeman's third season at Notre Dame, so it was kind of a thing of destiny that he made the national championship game in his third year. And then Ohio State, on the other hand, won the national championship in 2014, which was the first year that the playoff expanded to 4 teams. And so it's almost like it only seems right that they won the national title in 2014, and then 10 years later, and the playoff expanded to 12 teams, they won the national championship again. So last year was almost like a destiny between the two teams. It's like historic destiny. Super weird.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. and I see you have a lot of knowledge about this. So let's change a little bit here. What about Georgia versus Atlanta? I mean, Georgia versus Alabama. I'm sorry, Georgia versus Alabama. Who do you think is gonna win the game? I mean, I want your honest opinion. You are someone that knows about this.
Well,
Georgia
I
versus
mean,
Alabama.
so it's tricky to say because Alabama's won 10 of the last 11 matchups. But the one time that Georgia did win was in the 2020, I think that the 2021. It was in the 2021 national championship game. So the only time in the last 11 years that Georgia beat Alabama, they beat Alabama for the national championship. But Alabama's won every other time in the regular season and in the conference title games they've played against each other. And I'm inclined to think that Georgia's the better team here. But like I said, it's just so tricky to say. It's very common in college football to be a great team, but then to also have a team that gives you trouble, which is true, in this case with Georgia, Alabama. We've seen it the last 4 years with Michigan, Ohio State, 2021, 22, 23, 24. Ohio State lost 4 in a row to Michigan, despite winning the national championship last year. And then they finally, took care of business and won that game this year. But, Texas, Georgia, Texas lost to Georgia twice last year. They made the semifinal game, and Georgia got knocked out early in the playoff. Texas lost again to Georgia this year. You've seen it in the past with Oklahoma State. There have been several years where Oklahoma State is like, wow, they're a really good team this year, but they just couldn't beat Oklahoma. And Florida, Tennessee's been like that. Florida's beaten Tennessee, I think it's 8 of the last 10 years or something crazy, even though a lot of years Tennessee's a better team. So it's one of those things that I'm not sure if it's just a mental block or maybe the style of play, maybe the way the teams match up. A lot can factor into that. But it's very common in college football for one team to be a great team, but to have that one team that they just can't seem to get past for whatever reason.
I see. And lastly, who do you think should win the Heisman Trophy? Between Fernando Mendoza or Julian Sayin? Or do you have someone else in mind? I mean, those are 2 popular names. I mean, people talk about it, but I want your opinion. What do you think?
Well, to be completely honest, I think the Heisman Trophy's lost its value in current years, compared to what it was years ago when, people like Mark Ingram, I'd hate to say his name, but O.J. Simpson, years ago, it was a big deal to be the Heisman Trophy winner. But nowadays, I feel like it's a lot more political. There's a lot more factors that go into it. I don't necessarily think it's the best football player that wins the Heisman Trophy, but based on the criteria that it's judged upon, I honestly think that Julian Sayin at this point, unless Mendoza does something fantastic in the game tonight against Ohio State, I really think it's Julian Sayin's to lose because he has the highest completion percentage of all time in a regular season for a quarterback, which, considering he's a redshirt freshman, it's just super impressive. And so I don't think he's necessarily the best player in the country. I honestly think that someone like Caleb Downs is the best player in the country, but just simply because he doesn't have a crazy stat line because of his position. Different positions are different. So it's different. Some positions you can be a phenomenal player, but you just don't put up amazing stats just because that's not what your position demands of you. So I don't necessarily think Heisman's who the best player is, but I think in terms of the criteria we have to judge it upon, I think Julian Sayer's the clear front runner. Julian Sayin is the clear front runner.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, thank you,
And
Troy. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Troy. Yeah, tell me.
Oh yeah, just going right back, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the Notre Dame, the 3rd-year tradition. It's the craziest thing I'm reading right here, right now. Frank Leahy, Arab Parsegian, Dan Devine, Lou Holtz. I mean, that's pretty ironic. That's pretty it's more than coincidental that 4 coaches and then 4 coaches and Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman both made the championship game in their third seasons. It's a pretty wild stat line that 6 Notre Dame coaches all made the national championship game in their 3rd year. It seems to me like it's almost like a thing of destiny. Just the craziest thing I've ever seen. And one of the craziest storylines I've ever seen in sports, really.
Oh, well, happens, I guess. Well, thank you, Troy. Thank you for your time to share your knowledge and to share what's going on right now in the sports. Thank you so much for your time, and always a pleasure to see you, Troy.
Thanks, Jose. Have a good one.
You too.